Welcome to our How to Spread Kindness by Sharing a Simple Loaf of Bread, brought to you by Bread Encounters, a licensee of the Global Bread Houses Network. We are a small, still small, nonprofit with a very big mission to spread kindness and connect people with each other through bread. We do this through unique bread activities which foster unity and inclusion, and we also engage the community, people like you, to bake bread so that we can share it with those who need it. We picked this particular recipe for a number of reasons, and four of which I'm going to talk about. So number one, it is very delicious and very easy. You can't beat those two things. It's a no-knead bread, so you don't have to exert a lot of energy or effort on it. And even kids can do it. We've had kids successfully bake this bread and share it with their neighbors. Number two, it is healthier than any bread you can buy at the supermarket. Number three, it's inexpensive. It requires an overnight rest on the counter, and that means you only need a quarter teaspoon of yeast. And this means that you can get 9 loaves of bread out of one yeast packet that you would normally use to bake one loaf. And because of that, it is the perfect recipe and makes the perfect loaf to share with others. Now, having said all of this, I'm going to turn the time over to Sabine, our program director and bread baker extraordinaire. And in case I haven't mentioned it, I am Sibyl, the founder of Bread Encounters. Take it away, Sabine.
Hi, Sibyl. Thank you so much. Now I like to show you how to do it. Our dough is a pretty slow dough. Means you don't need a lot of hands-on time. You just need simple equipment like a mixing bowl. You need a spoon or even your hand to mix your dough. You need the flour. I go over the flour in a minute. You need water. You need yeast and salt. And of course, patience means the dough will be rest on your counter overnight for 12 to 18 hours.
I see all this fancy equipment you have up here.
Yeah, these are just tools I like to use for mixing the dough. This is the Danish dough hook, but it's not necessary to have one of those. You can use a simple wooden spoon. And of course, you need a baking loaf, and you need to grease this very well.
What size are those loaves?
I think they are 9 by 12. Or
so it's
9
like
by
a standard?
That's are the standard ones you
loaf,
find in every store. I bought this at the dollar store, so it's just $1 investment. If you don't like to invest, it will be fine to bake this also in aluminum pan, but always you have to grease it very well.
Could we use a glass?
You can use the glass. I'm not a big fan of using glass. Even you like to see how the bread rise in the oven. I just like to use a simple loaf pan. Okay. So I like to show you how to make it. So in my little wooden bowl, I will add 3 cups of all-purpose unbleached flour and a half a cup of whole grain flour.
So it doesn't have to be bread flour?
It doesn't have to be bread flour. Bread flour is a little bit higher in protein, but for our recipe it doesn't make a big difference. Okay. And because bread flour is really hard to find these days, I will go with just all-purpose flour. I wouldn't go for enriched and bleached flour. I will go just for unbleached flour. It has a better quality for your bread. And since you spend so much love to make it, why not use a little better flour for doing that?
Now, could I possibly make this recipe without the whole wheat substitute, just more AP flour if necessary?
Of course, you can use it. If you don't find whole wheat, just use 3.5 cup regular all-purpose flour.
Would I have to adjust the water possibly?
You don't have to adjust the water. I think it will be the same. I start first with the water. I use cold water. I prefer filtered water, but it doesn't have to be the filtered water. It's good if just room temperature. It doesn't have to be warm because the dough have plenty of time. This is the reason why we name this slow dough. Or like it's the same category as the no knead dough, so you don't have to do anything else. The dough will do the job with time. So I add the 14 ounces of water in my mixing bowl. In this case I have my wooden mixing bowl, and I add the flour. I already measured this here, so it's ready to go inside. So this is the 3 cup all-purpose flour and a 1/2 cup of whole wheat flour. This is King Arthur flour.
Oh yes, we want to take a moment here to thank King Arthur Flour, who is sponsoring us, not for this particular video, but we've received a flour grant from them and they have been very supportive of our mission. So thank you, King Arthur.
Yeah, so I use King Arthur flour, but every flour you find in a supermarket these days will be fine. So I give it a little swirl here, and I add now my yeast, and I use my spoons here. So I use a 1/4 teaspoon of yeast, and I use approximately 1 teaspoon of salt. I don't like it too salty. People might need a little bit more salt or less, but I will say 1 tablespoon will do it. So now it's nothing else as bring this together. It looks pretty simple that even kids can do it. I did this baking with my grandson, and he is just 2.5 years old, and he enjoyed that. So I show you how the dough comes together. So this is how the dough looks like. So even you have some dry spot on the side, doesn't matter, just keep it as it is and cover this with a plastic film or a kitchen towel and let it sit overnight on your counter.
So it is a very shaggy dough.
It's a very shaggy dough.
And you're sure that it's going to rise with just a 1/4 teaspoon of yeast?
Absolutely, because I give the dough the time and I don't have to do nothing else. I just put it on the counter and just let it rise for 12 hours or up to 18 hours, and then you are done. So after 12 to 18 hours, this is how the dough looks like. Has a lot of nice air bubbles. This is what we like to do and to reach. And it looks very, very wet. It looks like we have little frogs inside all the air bubbles. This is perfectly fine. So this is a very, very wet dough. Don't get nervous. This is the perfect consistency of the dough what we need to make the bread. So this is the bread resting another 1.5 hours. I like to spray this a little bit with water if you want, and add on top a little bit of old-fashioned oats, like that.
But you could alternatively also use a topping like a bagel
Yeah,
topping
these
or something.
everything bagel toppings are very delicious. Or even you don't like that, just keep it, I would say, naked, so it doesn't has an impact on the overall flavor. It's just for appearance.
Presentation.
Yeah. So, and then you put it in your oven for 45 minutes and bake it.
At 450 degrees.
At 450 degrees, yes, it's pretty simple. Since it is so simple, the dough, I even would do not just 1 loaf in one time. I will bake maybe 3 or 4 loaves at the same time. And this is the bread, it freezes well too. So you can either bake it for yourself, or you pass it on to neighbors and friends and so on. So it's a nice gift as well.
Yeah, so theoretically you could double the recipe and just make 2 loaves, which will go with our mission of making one and sharing the loaf.
Correct. So now you bake the loaf. I baked the loaf, the same dough, a little bit more fancy because I needed yesterday a loaf for my neighbor. So I baked the loaf in a cast iron pot. It's the same dough, just a different shape. And I let it rest in a banneton. Banneton, it's a broad form. It's pretty simple. The dough was inside here, but it does need to be very fancy. If you like to go more into baking, then you can do it and use it. If you don't have a basket like that, don't worry, you can use a colander with a kitchen towel. It only has to be very well floured inside so the dough can't stick to the fabric.
However, just to make the point, this is just an alternative to using the standard loaf pans. We just wanted to show you that this loaf is very versatile.
Yes.
So, but you can just bake it in the regular.
Yeah.
You don't need the banneton
so
at all.
I will use this kind of style for as a present. I do bread presentation for friends, and they always like this kind of bread style more than just a simple loaf form. But it's just your own taste. You don't have to do that. So then bake it in the cast iron pot. It's a little bit different as in your baking pan, but the result is the same. So I hope you like the bread and the idea to bake your own bread for the future. It's a pretty simple dough. Have fun. You can add to the dough everything what you want. Nuts, you can add bacon, cheese, cranberries, your fantasy. It's open for a lot of varieties. This is just a base dough, and to get the feeling for baking bread and get a healthy slice of bread for your morning cup of coffee. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabine,
You're welcome.
for that
Thank
awesome
you.
presentation. And I just want to say a few closing words. So now that you've learned how to make this very simple bread, if you like to get involved with us and bake bread for your neighbors who need it, please feel free to contact us at breadencounters@gmail.com or look us up on our website at breadencounters.org or www.breadencounters.com. Thank you for watching our movie, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Happy bacon.